Greater things are still coming. You told us, and these things are all coming from all things that come from your word, that you work all things for good, according to for those of us that are called according to your purposes. And so, God, I pray that you would help increase our faith in that and patience as we wait for you to move. And that you would give us, fill us with the fruit of your Spirit, that we would demonstrate peace and kindness and gentleness and joy as we wait for you to move. And while you are moving, while you're doing things that sometimes puzzle us when you begin doing them. God, we lift up this missionary, M, that we support. So thank you that we get to partner with them financially, and I thank you that we can partner with them spiritually as we lift them up in prayer, not just today, but obviously we've been doing this for years and years, over 20 years. God, I thank you that you have provided for the needs of those who are working with the Afghan people that have fled the country, that have left and are now working with the Afghan refugee community. God, I pray that you would give them great insight in this very crazy situation. There's not a lot that is secure or predictable. God, I pray that you would give them insight and wisdom to know how to be a light for you in the best way in the current situation. And then as they look forward into the fall and winter and then into the future, hoping to make it back into Afghanistan, God, you know what the obstacles are. You know where there will be roads. I pray that you would open their eyes to see that. God, I pray the same thing for all of us right here. We are your kids, and we have good news. We have your love that we can show to the people that are around us, and I pray that we would have those kinds of eyes as well, that you would give us your eyes and ears to see, how can I be Jesus' love to the people that are near me, the people who are displaced, the people who are in positions where there is not a lot predictable. God, I pray that you would show the fruit of your Spirit through each of our lives as well. And God, that's one of the reasons why we gather here every week, because we need encouragement to do just that. In a couple minutes, we're gonna listen to your word being taught, and we're grateful for how you have set aside Pastor Darrell to bring your word today. And God, I pray that you would help us to listen with wide open ears. We need you. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance. We need your direction. We need your comfort. God, I pray that you would help us to see you as that which we need today, and that you would speak mightily through Pastor Darrell. In Christ's name, amen. Thanks so much. Would you be seated, please?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Pastor Darrell here to keep you in the loop, give you a few announcements this morning for what's going on. First of all, I just, as always, just want to thank you so much for all that you do and all that you give. So we appreciate your discipline in your giving, and we want to encourage you to continue to do so. And maybe if you don't give to the church, maybe now's the time. So if you want more information on how to do that, you can call the office. And you could talk to me. I would be glad to help you with that. Anyway, a couple of a little bit more fun things than talk about money is we have Trunk or Treat coming up. That's coming up on the 24th of October from 3 to 5 o'clock. And we still need trunks and we still need candy. Now, we got quite a bit of candy. I'm going to try to turn around and show you. We've still got quite a bit of here. Hold on, let me do this. I know this is not professional, but you can handle it. All right, see, we still got a bunch of candy here. You can see we got candy. We got more candy back there in boxes. And there's all kinds of candy around. I know that's not really very professional. I hope I didn't get you sick or nauseated with that. But we still need candy because here's the deal. For every trunk that we have, we need 800 to 1,000 pieces of candy per trunk. So if you do the math, if let's say we have 20 trunks, which we want to have way more than that, at 1,000 pieces a piece, that's 50 million pieces of candy that we need. So please, if you would, I know that's wrong math, please, if you would, just bring some candy in this next week, and or if you're going to be a trunk, you could bring candy with you as well. But we would love for you to decorate your trunk and to come and to bring candy and to participate, all right? Lastly, we have our missions conference coming up the first weekend in November, November 6th and 7th, and we would love to have everybody come and be a part of that. So we have a Saturday night dinner, and we have some great speakers from local ministries and from global ministries that are going to be here, and we have the director of global partners for the whole Wesleyan Church, Dennis Jackson's going to be here too. So we would love to have you here Saturday night at 6, Sunday morning during the Sunday school hour, but it's going to start just a little bit earlier. I think it's going to be at 9 o'clock inside of the sanctuary, and then we have church at 10:30, and then we're going to have kind of a brunch lunch directly following it to conclude that weekend. So we would love to have you, everybody, to be here for any or all of those things. So that's all I got for you today. And I just love being your pastor, and I love being a part of this church, and I love worshiping God with you. So God bless you as we move ahead and worship. I want it to be noted that both weeks, last week and this week, all of the audio problems were my fault. I just want that to be noted. And that is one big head up there on that screen, isn't it? We gotta shrink that head down a little bit. That was crazy. I mean, I'm already big enough on the screens over here, and then you add that to it. Man, it looks like I got a sunburn, doesn't it? Woo. Anyway, okay, all right, stop that. Kids, 4 years of age through 5th grade are dismissed for Children's Church. Pastor Kathy is all the way in the back waiting for you. So if you would like to go, there she is. So you're going to go and have a time of singing and dancing and crafts and all kinds of stuff without adults, which is awesome. Some of the adults always want to come too. So, all right. We got them all? All right, we're going. So we just finished up a series last week called Winning the War in Your Mind. And I once again want to encourage you, you won't have a slide up there, but once again I want to encourage you, if you would, if you want to go deeper with that, you could buy the book, Winning the War on Your Mind. It's by Craig Rochelle. Or you can go to the library and try to find it, or you could steal it, or whatever you need to do to have that. So I just want to encourage you, if you want to continue that conversation, that is a great way of doing it. Because we're starting a new series today called Radical Rest. And back in June, we did something that we haven't since I've been here. Back in June, our staff kind of pinpointed a word and a theme that they wanted to go through, that we thought was going to be important to go through for the state of our church. And that theme was the term renew. And so what we have been doing is all of our series that we have been preaching deals with the concept of renew, especially the renewal of our mind. The renewal of our faith. What does that look like? And so we've been kind of pointing in that direction. So we talked about how to renew our faith. And we talked about, like last week, how to win that war in our mind. And this series called Radical Rest, we are dealing with something that I've never spoken on here before. And that is the Sabbath. Now, the Sabbath is an interesting thing, and we're going to dive into it actually for 4 weeks here of what God means by the Sabbath. But some of us in here, before I get into the sermon, some of us in here have a very stringent viewpoint of what day the Sabbath is supposed to be, how we're supposed to act, and so on. Okay? And if that's the case, that's awesome. I'm glad that you have that viewpoint. Some of you are kind of willy-nilly with the Sabbath. You don't really pay much attention to it. You love doing all kinds of things every day of the week. Okay? So this is for both of you, but it's just going to be, I just want you to open your minds and open your hearts, because there are going to be some things that I say that may or may not make you feel slightly uncomfortable. I know that's a shock coming from me, okay? So let's start. I want to tell you a story just real quick. I want to talk about David Green for a moment. Anybody know who David Green is? Let's put the picture up on what that is. He is the president of Hobby Lobby. When David Green built his first store in 1972, his initial plan was to close his stores on Sundays so that his employees and their families, as well as his customers, could take the day off. But he got scared. And a competitor vowed to drive him out of business, and one of his tactics was to operate 7 days a week. So David opened on Sundays to match the competition. And as the years went by, his business thrived and expanded. He gave money to charity. He gave money to the church, but his conscience bothered him. With one hand, he was supporting the church, and with the other hand, he was working against it, literally. For many of his employees, Sunday was the only time they could go to church or spend time with their children. And we've all heard the saying, right? The customer is always right. And that seems like sound business advice, and everything about David's approach in retailing honored that axiom, but something else worked on his conscience. A voice said, "I come before your customers." 2 decades after he began his business, David looked at the numbers. Hour for hour, Sunday had become his most profitable day of the week. He was selling $100 million. Who knew that you could buy that many plastic flowers, right? $100 million in merchandise per year just on Sundays. David prayed, and then he took the plunge. He decided to permanently close his stores on Sundays. He said, and that's when the business really took off. He said, of course, that of his Hobby Lobby chain. See, David's story is pretty dramatic, isn't it? I mean, making a decision to possibly lose hundreds of millions of dollars over obeying a command is beyond, on some level, beyond most of our understanding. But what about all the rest of us? Where it's not hundreds of millions of dollars, but some of the rest of us who make that same decision to live 24/6. We choose a Sunday to do it, right? Single mother who needs to work 2 jobs. Or a college student who has a big exam on Monday, or a family whose child faces Little League playoffs on a Sunday. See, honoring the Sabbath ends up not only being an act of faith, but it ends up being an act of courage as well. So this series is to help you and me embrace the Sabbath in our lives, to make the Sabbath more than just the 4th command of the 10 Commandments, but to make it a lifestyle so we can enjoy life more and know God better. See, we live in the most fast-paced time in history, right? We could fly anywhere in the world. We've cured diseases that have plagued humanity for thousands of years. We can go anywhere we want, find out any kind of information about everything right in our fingertips. Our joke in our family is we ask a question, somebody goes, well, I don't know. There's well, I have a smartphone, I'll look it up. Because the internet's always right. So I have in my hand, right, I have a phone, a camera, thousands of songs, an arcade, access to any newspaper. I have a myriad of different passwords and apps on my phone that is supposed to, by the way, save us time, because that's what technology is supposed to do. But what happens is we find ourselves more lost and stressed than ever before. And I contend it's because we have ignored one of the most essential commands that God has ever created, and that is the command to Sabbath. On some level, we are all too busy. My oldest son, his name is Judd, and he's 26 years old. He's a wonderful young man in the Air Force, but when he was little, he had just learned how to walk. Actually, he was pretty prolific at it. He wasn't very old, though. And Kathy and myself and Judd and my mom and dad, I don't know if they remember this, we decided to go to a mall when we were visiting them one time. I don't know if you guys remember this story or not. So we're in the mall, and I don't know whether we're looking for, I don't remember the situation, looking for a present for me or something. I think we were in like a Foot Locker or something like that. We're looking around, and this is back when malls, you know what a mall is? You guys remember malls? And we were in a Foot Locker, and we were looking all around, and Kathy's looking, and I'm looking, and my mom and my dad, as much as he really cared about looking in a Foot Locker, but we were, I think you were out sitting on the bench or something, I don't know. And we were all kind of separately doing our thing. And I thought, and Kathy thought, that my parents were looking out for Judd. And my parents thought that we were looking out for Judd. So nobody was looking out for my son, Judd. So I'm in Foot Locker. There's all kinds of people around. And in an instant, my mind goes from, where's my son, to, oh no, my son's been kidnapped. We're all going to, it's like the end of the world. We're devastated. You all know what I'm talking about with your children. So we go on mode. And it wasn't more, be honest with you, it wasn't more than 3 to 4 minutes. But it seemed like it was 3 to 4 hours. And we're out there, and we're in the mall, and we look around the store, everything, and then we start looking in the other stores and looking outside. And, well, he was pretty much, he was 2 stores down in a toy store. Is that the right story, Mom? Yeah. Something like that. The point is, it's not all about all the shoes in the store and all the people that in the store. They weren't important to the story. What was important to the story is what was missing from the story, or what was missing from the store. And that was most important, my son. See, just a short while ago, almost everything in society stopped once a week. How many of you are old enough to remember that? A lot of you are old. Yeah. It stopped once a week, right? Gas stations, grocery stores, banks. Now you're saying, well, it's like that now. Well, it's a whole different reason it's like that now, right? At night, on Sundays, everybody would shut down. It was a giant shock to our system back in 2000? Back in 2000, when we moved to Forsyth, Montana from Los Angeles, California. Everything closed. What? That's ridiculous. Right? Everything's closed at 6 o'clock at night. But we no longer have a society that sleeps or does business only 6 days a week. I mean, some of them do, but something has gone missing, and that something is the day of rest. And it wasn't merely a religious thing, by the way. It was irrespective of faith. All members of society were given a guaranteed day off of rest. But over time, that day has been taken away. And the Sabbath has been taken away. And just as Judd was missing in the mall, worried us to death, so should the missing of a day of rest. It should be of deep concern. So where did it go? And can we live without it? I want to read, this is one place inside the Old Testament where Sabbath is talked about. You can go, of course, to the Ten Commandments in Exodus, but this is Deuteronomy chapter 5, 12 through 15. It says, observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy as the Lord your God has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But on the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, and this is important, your ox, remember you guys' ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest, as you do. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God has commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. Okay? So as we look at these verses, there's some pretty important words that come up in this verse. But one of the really important ones that I love, and if you look at in Exodus 2, is the word remember. Remember. I don't know about you, but the older I get, the harder it is for me to remember. Right? I just blame it on being deaf. I didn't hear it. I don't know what you're talking about, dear. The baby was sleeping, was crying. I don't know. I mean, isn't it true that our memory becomes less reliable the closer we are to the things we care about the most? We're the last ones to see what is so obvious to an outsider, called blind spots, right? Haven't we all seen a child that is quite clearly spoiled and the parents seem to have absolutely no clue? I love what Matthew Sleeth says about the Sabbath in this term. He says, maybe it isn't, because before I get into that, it's not that we're angry and purposely have shaken our fist at God and said, we're just not going to do that anymore. I don't think it's because of that. I think it's more of absent-mindedness and just kind of letting it go. And this is what he says. He says, maybe it isn't so much dark intentions that resulted in the loss of the Sabbath as it is kind of an absent-mindedness. Maybe that is why the commandment about the Sabbath is the only one of the 10 commandments that begins with the word remember. So in remembering, we must ask the questions, what should we remember? Where did the Sabbath come from? When are we supposed to remember it? Now this is where it starts getting a little bit interesting. You and I, we take our 7-day week for granted, but if you know anything about history, our 7-day week, our calendar is arbitrary. Did you know that the time it takes for the earth to go around the sun is not even an even number of days? Right? Did you know that the Roman calendar of the year 46 BC contained 445 days in it? The Jewish year follows the lunar cycles and contains around only 360 days. And the current Jewish calendar, invented in the 4th century, is not the one that Jesus used. So here's the $1 million question, right? Is the Sabbath that is commanded in the 10 Commandments, the Sabbath that Moses observed, that same Sabbath, is it the same Sabbath that we observe today? Here's your answer. You ready? You got a 1 in 7 chance. There you go. 1 in 7 chance. Now, I don't want to discourage you once again if you believe that the Sabbath should be on a Saturday or on a Sunday. If this is a deeply held belief, then by all means hold true to that belief. But whether you believe it's Saturday or Sunday or not, here's the deal. Ready? Celebrate the day you believe is ordained. See, because what I'm aiming for in this city or in this series is not to defend a particular day of Sabbath. What I would like for all of us to do is stop 1 out of 7 days and mark it as holy. It's not the day that's so important, it's the stopping and the resting. So let's take a step back. Let's take a step back and look at the creation of Sabbath. Okay? Right? It didn't just show up in the Ten Commandments, right? All of a boom, oh, there's the Sabbath. Oh. The Sabbath goes back to the creation of the world, right? So let me just remind us of the story real quickly. First day, God creates the heavens and the earth, separates day and night, and he said it was good. Second day, God creates the atmosphere, and he said it is good. Third day, God creates oceans and seas and dry land and the vegetation that goes on it, and it was. Fourth day, God made the sun and moon, and he said it was. Fifth day, God created the animals in the water and the birds of the air, and he said it was. Sixth day, God created the animals on the land and said it was. And he created man and woman and said it was very good. See, trick you. Very good. And then on the seventh day, God rested and called it holy. It's interesting. Everything that God created was good or very good, but when it came to the last day of creation, he made it holy. He doesn't say that about anything else except the day he chose to rest. And once again, I love what Matthew Slee says about this. He says, and I want you to listen to this because this really hit me. Up to this point, everything has been created out of nothing, right? Days 1 through 6. But on the morning of the seventh day, God makes nothing out of something. And he not only created it, but he made it holy. The original definition, by the way, of Sabbath, here is the word intermission, or to cease from working. God created the Sabbath so that you and I would take an intermission from our normal daily routine and stop. And he also created the Sabbath to be holy. It was not only created for you to stop working, but it was created for you to seek after God. Now, you and I will never be able to turn back time. I think there's a song, if we could turn back time. Yeah. Some of you know those songs better than you know other things. Okay. Our world will not go back. As a matter of fact, it will probably get even more crazy. The Sabbath will never again be a social default. It will need to be a conscious choice by each and every one of us to remember the why and the how of the Sabbath. The Hebrews, on some level, believed that if everyone would just keep the Sabbath for just one day, everything would be set right. Be set right? Now, what would your world look like if you and your family remembered the Sabbath? What would it look like? So I talk about the Sabbath this way. I know some of you are logical, concrete thinkers. You've believed one way, you're locked into it. Others of you are a little more free in your thinking, a little bit more flexible in your thinking. So when it comes to the Sabbath, a lot of times concrete thinkers have a tendency to take the letter of the law and push away the intent of the law, right? God gives us the letter of the law, but there's always a heartfelt intent behind it. We don't just follow. God didn't give us laws just to follow. He gives us a reason why and expects us to follow it with compassion and love. But flexible thinker has no problem centering on the intent, on the love and the compassion side of the law, but throwing out the very letter of it as well. So wherever you stand, maybe you're a moderate, right? What was the objective behind the fourth command? Genesis 2:2-3 says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it he rested from all the work of creating what he had done. Because see, what I hear is I hear a lot of people talking about the how of creation. How did God create all this kind of stuff? I mean, there's actually museums, right? The Creation Museum. There's museums dedicated to the study, and there's constant philosophical arguments between what's called the literal creationist and the evolutionary creationist, right? Is it actually one day? Is it 24 hours? Probably not. Is it thousands of years? Is it millions of years? There's all these thoughts out there, but I don't want to spend time talking about the how God created the Sabbath. Instead, I want to talk about the who. And that who, of course, is God. Who spoke light into shining? Who spoke the earth into spinning? Who spoke the creepy crawlies into crawling? God did. By the way, you need to embrace that, you people who are afraid of spiders. And those are God's creation right in front of you. You need to pick it up and kiss it and love it just like it's his. Well, a lot of you are afraid of spiders. I didn't realize that would get such a... Some of you are freaking out right now just thinking about them. I mean, God created those things. How? How did he create those things? Guess what? That's not the point. It's not the point how he created. Imagine an infinite God creating for 6 infinitely glorious days, and then on the seventh day he kicks back and he rests. Can you imagine that? Take a picture of what you think rest is. And if you think rest means doing something, you're missing out on rest. You know, I think of a hammock, cold drink, my wife pushing me, feeding me grapes. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That happens every Saturday anyway. I mean, we don't know the details of how he rested. The point is, it's something very important about the character of God is revealed on the seventh day. God stops. This is hard. Anybody else feeling a little bit weird about this stuff? I mean, because there's so many. God stops. God didn't need rest after creating the universe because he was tired. He rested because he is holy. And everything that God does is holy. It's simple, right? God rests. God is holy. Therefore, rest is holy. So next time you're taking a nap, teens, next time you're sleeping, you're resting, and your parents come in and say, have you cleaned your room yet? Have you picked up your clothes yet? You know what you need to tell them? Just say, Mom, leave me alone. I'm becoming more holy right now. Okay? I'm resting right now. Okay? But as we conclude our time today, I just want to finish with 3 quick reasons why we should rest. Okay, this is not exhaustive. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into way more of this stuff as we go on, right, in the series. And I'm excited. The last week of the series, so we'll do this. We'll do 3 weeks, and then we have the missions conference, and then we're going to conclude this series on the 14th, and then you get to hear Pastor Mike preach. And I'm excited about that. I hope he does well. I hope he doesn't make me look bad. I mean, that would be horrible. You see, you can't know whether he's smiling or anything right now. He has that mask on. You can't. But here it is. We observe the Sabbath. We rest because of 3 things. Number 1, we rest because it helps us practice the act of restraint.
The fact that God rested shows us a glimpse of his character. And one of those characteristics, are you ready for this, is that he's a God of restraint. See, restraint is when refraining from doing everything that one has the power to do. Refraining from the power that one has the ability to do. So do you practice restraint in your life? Yeah, you can go out and mow your yard. Yeah, you can go and work for overtime that day. Yeah, absolutely. You can take your child to baseball. And I'm not dogging on those kind of things. Trust me, we went through all of this stuff when we were parents, raising all kinds of kids for all these kind of stuff. But, I mean, what restraint do you show? And don't think that restraint's a weakness, by the way. Actually, restraint takes more strength than just doing whatever. Restraint is holy. And if you think about it, after Sabbath was introduced in Genesis, think about this for a minute. It did not show up again. It wasn't spoken about until Exodus chapter 16. It wasn't mentioned after Eve, after the flood, after the Tower of Babel, through the lives of Abraham and Isaac, not to mention when Joseph goes from rags to riches. When Exodus opens, Exodus 1, 400 years have passed since there was a sign from God. And the Hebrews went from honored guests in Egypt, you remember Joseph went there, and they were honored guests, to being slaves, working every day, building brick after brick after brick. So God's thinking to himself, okay, it's Deuteronomy, it's Exodus right now. They've just kind of left out of Egypt. What better time to educate the human race about rest than after 20 generations of slavery? Restraint. You don't have to work every day. Number 2, rest points us to simplicity. God gave the Israelites 613 laws that explained everything from how to handle your dead brother's wife to how to handle an unsolved murder. 613 laws. That seem a lot. You would think the 613 laws would cover just about everything. And if it didn't, then the powers that be would create some extensions of a law. The problem is that people are people. People, meaning you and me, we try our hardest to get around the law. And we see it all the time. The laws we don't like, we try to skirt around here and there. It's not fair. Doesn't pertain to me. When I was a youth pastor, the question, when I was a youth, and I'm sure it's still probably a question today, when we talked about sex, it was always, how far is too far? What equals sex? Right? Can I do this? That's not this. You say sex is this, and this is not this, so I could do this, and I can, how teens, but we do the same thing as adults, not about sex necessarily. The habit doesn't stop when we become grown-ups. Right? And it was the same back then. The rabbis just adding rules to the laws of God to attempt to answer the what-ifs and strengthen the law. When it came to the Sabbath, there were hundreds, by the way, of additional laws, additional rules. For example, moving furniture was work. But what about making your bed? Was that work? What about pulling your chair out from the table? Now, walking about a half a mile, if you walked more than that, then you're breaking the Sabbath. So you're telling me that I could walk 0.5 miles, but I can't walk 0.51 miles, and that would be breaking the Sabbath. Let's say making popcorn was work. My wife would be in big trouble if that was the case. She loves popcorn. But is picking my teeth to remove the popcorn kernel, is that work? Right? See, God never intended these rules to monopolize. It was about what you could do. It was about stopping and focusing on God. That is the simplicity of Sabbath. There should not be a lot of, you can do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. It's about stopping what you normally do day in and day out and rest a little and focus on God a lot. That's it. The last thing that resting does is it provides you freedom. And it works with the simplicity. It goes along with that. The Sabbath wasn't made to constrain you. Some are like, I don't want to do that. I mean, I can't do this. It was actually made to free you. You know, like all the laws were meant to do, by the way. God's laws are good for you. And I'm not trying to be a taskmaster, but think about this. Let's talk about Jesus, for example, when he's talking about the antithesis in Matthew chapter 5, and he says, don't just, you heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I say don't even lust after your neighbor's wife, or don't even lust after. Why would he tell us not to lust? Well, if you know anything about that, you understand that lusting objectifies people and eventually will hurt your relationship with that person and others. You may think it doesn't bother you because it's great at the time. He says, don't lie to one another. This is the one we love to manipulate, white lies. I could lie to the government a little bit. I could lie to my pastor. I know when you're lying, by the way. God tells me. He says, no. Why don't we lie? Because speaking the truth gives you freedom. You're never caught in a web of lies if you're speaking the truth. And you never have to remember the story that you made up so you can retell it. It frees your conscience, doesn't it? Remember that. The problem is that we have a tendency to circumvent the intent of good laws. Because we want to be bad. But when we try to circumvent the good laws, it results in adding more laws. And in adding more laws, we try to fit God into our lives instead of fitting our lives into God. So let me end with this. The Sabbath was created to be holy, to protect the worker, to set the stage for the celebration of God. When we don't follow it, we subtract the joy and celebration, and we throw the holiness of it out altogether. So as we dive into this series, I want to make us think about our lives. Remember back when I talked about the Israelites and how they were enslaved by the Egyptians, and they were slaves to the Egyptian masters, and every day, if you read this, they would increase their workload but decrease the amount of product or resources to give them to make the bricks. Every day they would have to make brick after brick after brick, never resting. Always going. As a matter of fact, back then, I think the Egyptian calendar was a 10-day week, 3 weeks out of the month. Every day. Always going. And I want us to think about, in our lives, the real or the virtual bricks that we make every day. We got to be careful, guys. It's easy to work at home. In the world that we live in now, it's easy to pull out our computer and do a little bit of work here and a little bit of work there. Is the meaning of our lives more than making bricks? And here's another question we're going to be answering. Have we substituted something else for the bricks that will end up subtracting from the purpose of the Sabbath? You may be saying, I'm not working, but I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. These are tough questions. But it's really good to know, and I'm going to just end with this statement. because I am 34 seconds in the red, right? Really good to know that God is concerned about our rest. He's not just concerned about what you do. He's concerned about what you don't do. All right, let's pray. So, Heavenly Father, once again, we are so grateful for who you are, for the word that you've given us. And God, we just love opportunities to be able to worship you and honor you. And God, I know for some people this is not a big deal for them. They already follow it. For some people, this is a new idea. And for some people, we know about it, but we just play around with it when it fits us. So God, as we walk into what it means to Sabbath, as we walk into what does it mean to actually rest and to stop, help us to see that you're not trying to be mean or some kind of overlord, but you are trying to help us. Help us to live in a world of peace and tranquility that can only come from the correct balance of rest and work. So today I pray that you would put inside of every one of our hearts that those bricks that we have, that we put in place of you, that we put in place of our Sabbath, and start inspiring and lighting in our hearts what we need to do to move those things out of the way so that they can rest and know you better. I thank you for each person in this room. Be with those who are hurting. Just walk with us each and every day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would you stand with us?
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Your sin runs deep, your grace is more, your grace is found, is where you are, and where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. Teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you, oh, I need
May that be our prayer as we go. Thanks for being here. I'm going to lean on that this week. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week.
Who is the way, the truth, the life? Who is the holy word of life? Who is the vision to our eyes? Who is the love that will abide? Only Jesus, only Jesus. Who is truest life? Only Jesus Christ. Only Jesus, only Jesus. Who is lifted high? Only Jesus Christ. Who is the purpose of our days? Who is our hope that doesn't fade? Who is our courage and our strength?